Now, the fifth class of Azon Overhaul is all about planning our entire expansion. This is where we're going to be taking our research that we have been doing over the last couple of classes and putting all of this into a complete plan for our website. Now, whether you end up doing all of the work on your website yourself or possibly deciding to outsource it, it really won't matter for this particular step because it's actually quite useful for you to put together this plan in either case. If you're doing the work yourself, it will be really useful guidance to help you as you proceed. It helps to prevent you from getting overwhelmed because you can break the entire project down into these smaller projects that you can complete one at a time and just check them off as you go. And then if you're outsourcing this work, you can just pass this entire plan along to, for example, your writer, and they can put all the writing together that you would need. And then maybe you just go back in and put this writing into your website in the appropriate places. So either way, this plan, I think you will find to be very beneficial. Now, what we're going to be doing is, once again, taking our research from the last few classes, and we're basically going to organize this into a complete overhaul plan to the point where we know exactly what we're going to be doing on each individual page of our website. So what we're going to do is start by organizing our research. We're going to take all these different topics and keywords and pages that we have and put it into some kind of a structure that makes sense. Then we're going to be removing and combining topics to come up with a final plan of all of our pages. And finally, we're going to go back into all of those pages and do a bit more of a detailed plan. So to start with, we're going to be organizing our research. Now, as I go through this particular class, I'm going to be referring back to my own research and putting together my own overhaul plan so you guys can see exactly how this works and how you translate the research to that final plan. So to start, what I want to do is to make a list of all the different pages that are on my site. But beyond that, I want to have the actual structure of my website. So this includes things like my homepage and my category pages and things of that nature. So if I'm looking at my main website, I start with my homepage on the main domain name. Underneath that, I then have these three different categories, and under those categories, I have a number of different pages that go along with each of them. So if I was to put together a complete listing of the pages on my site, it might look something like this. So the entire point of making this listing of all the different pages is so you have something that you can refer back to when you're both organizing your research and also when you're putting your plan together. And then finally, when you're going back through your website and actually doing this work, you can look back at this plan that is broken down page by page for your site, and you can know exactly what you're supposed to be doing on any given page. And finally, I have my brand pages. And technically, the pins on page is kind of a subcategory page because it has these other two pages linked up with it. So now beyond all of these pages that I have listed, the only other thing that I really have is this About Us page that I have linked up from the top of the site here. So this gives me a listing of all the different pages that I have on my site. And not only that, but it gives me the structure of my website. So I know that these are my category pages and that I have these pages, but they're grouped into these category pages. So this becomes important later on. Now, what I want to do is then take my research and I want to organize the changes to my existing site. And then finally, I want to organize my new page topics as well. So I'm going to pull up my list of my research here. And then I also have my plan. So you can see this in a bit of a split screen. So to start, I want to organize the changes to my existing pages. So what that means is anything that I have planned on doing to one of these pages that I have already come up with on this list that is within my research, I want to transfer this information over here. For example, on my IKEA page, I have all of this information here that goes along with it. I can just cut this out, make a little bit of space, and paste this right below IKEA. So I can continue on like this and simply move all of my relevant information. Now the entire point of this is so, once again, you know when you're going back through your plan at the end, what you need to be doing where, and you also have your relevant research to go along with it. This is also why I'm starting a new document here, because this existing document where I have all of my research built into it, I don't want to get rid of this. While I am sitting here cutting all of this information out of this document, ultimately I still want to be able to keep this and refer back to it in its whole form if needed. However, I also want to be able to look at this broken down page by page throughout my site. So this is why I'm once again transferring things over there. Now there are a number of pages on my site where I don't have any kind of research information to go along with it. For my particular site, I was looking more at the most important pages, the most popular pages, and also the pages that showed the need for the most improvement. So these are the things that personally I'm going to be focusing on with my overhaul. So now, for the most part, I have everything transferred over for my existing pages, at least as far as the research that I originally put together. And everything left, all of this stuff, is about new brands that I was thinking about targeting. So these are going to be new pages that I'm thinking about creating. So now I'm going to add my new pages in finally. Now, whenever you're adding new pages into your overhaul list, you have to think about where these pages are going to be going on your website. You're basically making an overall plan for your site here. So when you're adding the new pages in, where are these pages going to be showing up on your public website? That is where you want to be adding it into your list. So for these, they are new brands that I want to target. So they're obviously going to go into my brands section. However, if you have new topics that you want to target and they're not going on an existing page, plus the page doesn't go along with one of your existing categories that you use for organization on your website, then you will need to come up with a new category that you want to create. So how I have my brands listed here, or my consumer concerns, if I had a whole new section of articles that didn't go along with one of these three pre-existing things that I have on my site already, I might just make a new category, such as the consumer concerns or the brands category. And then whatever my new pages were, they would go underneath that new category. So for these, I'm just going to star these as new, just so I know when I'm going back through that these are not pre-existing pages on my site, that these are brand new pages that I am at least thinking about going after. So now I have pretty much an empty research list. Everything else is then transferred along to my overhaul plan. So then to proceed forward, the next thing I want to do is combine and remove topics. There are a number of different things that you may want to do to clean up topics on your site. Personally, I'm not going to have any of these examples to show you today. So it's going to be more of talking about it and making some references to my list just as a what-if scenario. But with the first one, removing duplicate topics, there are a lot of cases where you might be doing keyword research or Amazon product research, and you're just going through and blindly writing down phrases and traffic levels to go into your research list. But then when you go to revisit it, you realize that some of your topics mean the same thing. It's two completely different phrases, but they still have the exact same meaning. Using my IKEA down comforter page as an example. If I have two different keywords, let's say the IKEA page is not already on my website, and this is a new page or a new brand that I'm thinking about targeting. So in my research, I have two different keywords that I've come up with: IKEA down comforters and down feather comforters made by IKEA. Even if both of those phrases had a nice amount of traffic on them, I would not want to create separate pages on my website to target each of those phrases because they both mean the exact same thing. So any duplicate phrases like that have the same meaning, you want to make sure that you toss those out. However, you may not want to delete them entirely. For example, on some of these new brands that I have decided to target, I've gone through and done some keyword research for them and have found a number of different phrases that all basically mean the same thing, but they all have traffic levels to them, and the phrases are a little different. They use different words, at least in part of the phrase. These Royal Hotel Collection keywords down here are good examples. Royal Hotel Collection down comforter, down alternative comforter, and comforter set. You would not want to create 3 separate pages going after each of these terms. Instead, you create one page about Royal Hotel down comforters, and perhaps you mention these phrases somewhere throughout the content of that page. That's how you go about targeting these additional phrases. So while you want to wipe out the duplicate topics from your overall plan as far as what new pages to create, you still would want to retain that keyword research information for use when it comes time to write the content for that page. I would want to be using phrases on this page beyond Royal Hotel and Hotel Collection. I would want to be using things like down comforter and down alternative comforter and comforter set. Even if I didn't use these phrases directly next to the words Hotel Collection, still on my Royal Hotel Collection comforter page, all of these words are going to be relevant and can help me to get a search ranking for them. So this is more the proper way to go about targeting a wide variety of different keywords that still all mean the same thing. Now you have a number of other cases where you have topics that are very similar, yet again, but they don't mean the same exact thing anymore. As an example, on my IKEA down comforter page, I have a number of different types of IKEA down comforters, models essentially, that I want to target, or at least I want to go after keyword traffic for. They don't necessarily justify enough content to fill up an entire page by themselves talking about each individual model. So instead, I'm going to be grouping all of these very similar topics all onto one big page. I'm going to have my IKEA down comforter page, and it's going to go after not only the ones that I already have here, but also the pre-existing keywords that I'm already ranking for, such as the My Saran keywords. So anytime you see something like this, unless you know for sure that there is enough unique, different content that you can have on those different but still very similar topics, then you want to combine them into one single page. If you do think you have enough content to put 500 words, maybe even potentially to expand it beyond that, upwards of 1,000 words, then by all means create separate pages for it. Now I'm still a little undecided at this point, but I do have this one particular situation on my site where initially I split this off into separate pages on my Pins On brand. I have a Pins On page, which is basically a subcategory page of the brands page. And then underneath the pins on page, I have Primaloft and Pyrenees. And these are two separate pages linked up from the pins on page. But the advertisements are located on these two bottom pages and not on this top pins on page. So with that said, I originally went after this as 3 separate pages. Looking back on it now and seeing the stats that I have after a prolonged period of time has passed for this website, I feel like this might perform even better as one single page. If I just had a pins on down comforter page, kind of like I have with my IKEA page, and I just have everything all contained within that one page. So I'm still on the fence about this, but I am very heavily leaning towards combining these similar topics all onto one page. Now this could certainly apply beyond brands and products. You have tons of informational phrases that this kind of situation could easily apply to. So don't just be focused on the products, because that's what I was talking about in the class. Make sure you're looking at all of your different page topics and ask yourself if it is worth, or if it really justifies having an entire page on your site for that one topic, or if it would be better suited combined with a number of other very similar topics to make one really large authority page about whatever common subject it is that they share. So obviously my common subject for my Pyrenees and my Primaloft page is going to be my pins on brand. So that page that contains everything is whatever that common subject is. And for this page, it would be my pins on brand. For my IKEA page and those different comforters, obviously it's going to be the IKEA brand that is their common similarity. Now, one other thing worth pointing out while I am at it, as far as my plans go for this page and thinking about combining these similar topics, one of the reasons why I am leaning towards combining this, besides the fact that the IKEA page is far outperforming the pins on page, is when I look at my average search rankings, I'm actually on the top page on average for the terms that I rank for on my pins on page. But on the other two, I'm off of the first page. I'm actually on page number 2 for Primaloft, and this would be page number 4 for the Pyrenees page. So I feel like maybe I should take all the content from the Pyrenees and the Primaloft page and put everything from all 3 of these pages all on my pre-existing pins on page. And then I can actually forward any search ranking power that these pages may have had, or rankings that they may have had, and I can push them along to my original pins on page 2. And I might be able to make this even more powerful than it already is. And I might be able to even get it along the lines of what the IKEA page is performing at. So beyond that, the duplicate topics and the very similar topics. The other one, which should be pretty obvious because I stressed this over and over again in previous classes, was staying focused on what your entire website niche is really about. My site is obviously about down comforters. There are tons of things that relate to down comforters that I easily could have thought, hey, it would be a good idea to expand in this realm, such as sheets or pillows or duvets or even mattresses or entire beds. But ultimately, I would be diluting my overall niche that way. So I don't want to go after anything that is not specifically focused on whatever my overall website is already about, especially since my site already has good rankings and has already been earning Amazon commissions. I want to make sure that that doesn't get messed up. I'm looking to improve my site, not destroy all of the positives that I've built for it up to this point. So I don't have any non-focused topics, but I wanted to make sure to stress that for you once again, because that is really, really important. So now what I want to do is go back through each of my pages that I have on my overhaul plan. And I want to get these pages finalized. This has a number of different steps to it, and these you can see on my screen. The first one is to ensure that all of my changes are grouped into different pages. We should have already accomplished this previously, but just in case, there might be anything left over from your research list, or perhaps you go through and you find a big chunk of your research that you transferred over, and maybe part of this is out of place and it belongs somewhere else. Just simply make sure that any changes or things like that that you're going to be doing to these existing pages, make sure that they are in the correct place. The next thing is to organize your page subtopics. The page subtopics are going to be things like your informational pages where you wanted to get a better search ranking, and so you decided to expand the amount of information that you offer there. And so you come up with another couple of subtopics or main features having to do with whatever that page is about. And these are the subtopics that you're going to expand with. So on my IKEA page, I'm going to be expanding with new types of products on this page. But this, again, could certainly apply to informational pages as well. It's just that on this particular site, the reason why I'm doing this overhaul is to correct some problems with my product pages, which you guys have been able to see in the previous classes. So to organize these, I want to think about, number one, what makes sense for the people that are reading my page? Do things need to be in any particular order for my overall page topic to simply make sense? Some things that you talk about having to do with an overall subject might have some kind of chronological order to it, so you would need to make sure that those things are sorted appropriately. Beyond obvious stuff like that, though, if you just have a random collection of different topics that you're going to be adding to this page, and there's no rhyme or reason as far as how to sort it, I would recommend doing it by keyword traffic. Whatever the subtopic is, whatever keyword phrase you have associated with that subtopic, simply put the more popular keywords up at the top of your page, or at least higher up in your content. If you're going to be adding to your existing page and maybe you don't want to mess with that content because it's already ranking really well, then simply go to the bottom of that page and start adding content. But there might be certain things that you would want to have up at the top of the bottom of all that content that you're adding. So with that said, I have these phrases here. They definitely have higher traffic than some of the other ones, but I could use a little bit of rearranging. So simply sorting it like this, it puts the more important stuff up at the top of my page, gives me a better shot at getting a ranking. Now on this page, I'm going after fairly low traffic phrases because this is really just what makes sense for this page. Most of the traffic on this page is already coming into it from other phrases. I simply need to convince them that that original product that they were looking for, the Miser Rondown Comforter, is no longer in stock or no longer available or is discontinued. And hey, these are your other options. So while these products might not really be popular yet in terms of keyword traffic, I can take the people that are looking for a more well-known but discontinued product, and I can instead get them to try to buy one of these other products that have replaced it instead. Beyond organizing all the different subtopics that you might want to cover on a page, the other main thing that I would recommend to do to finalize your overhaul pages is to go back through and figure out what your primary and your secondary keywords are for each of the pages you're going to create. A lot of times when you have a number of different subtopics that are all being put onto one page, sometimes it gets a little confusing about what you're really trying to target there. A really good example, once again, using my IKEA Down Comforter page. My primary keyword phrase is IKEA Down Comforter or IKEA Down Comforters. However, there are probably a dozen main subtopics that I'm going to end up going after on that page. And while those aren't going to be the primary keyword phrases, they are secondary keywords. I do still need to know about them, but it's also important to know, which one is boss. So for example, on my IKEA Down Comforter page, obviously my IKEA keyword is my primary keyword phrase, whereas Myceron or IKEA Myceron, IKEA, all of the other models of down comforters that they have, these are all going to be my secondary keywords. So it's good to know this ahead of time, once again, because when you're creating these pages on your website, it's good to use the primary keyword phrase somewhere within the title of your page. And in general, you want to have the secondary keywords mentioned at least one time somewhere throughout the content of that page, even if you're not using that keyword phrase in its entirety. What I mean by that is going back to the whole common subject thing. If you're looking at a primary keyword phrase like IKEA Down Comforter, and then a secondary phrase like IKEA Myceron Down Comforters, I don't need to be repetitive with the parts of those two keywords that are common. So IKEA Down Comforter and IKEA Myceron Down Comforter, that secondary keyword phrase contains every single word that is found in that primary phrase. And honestly, the same thing would go for pretty much any of these other models of IKEA Down Comforters. But if I repeatedly use the phrase IKEA this down comforter, IKEA that down comforter, then I'm going to drastically reduce the chances of being able to rank on that primary phrase because I'm overkilling it as far as search engine optimization goes. You don't want to use your keyword phrases too much. You want to use them just enough. And honestly, I feel like if I'm looking at one of my articles and I feel like I haven't used my keyword phrase quite enough, as long as it is there, then chances are it's probably good. I like to err a little on the safe side there because usually that's what ends up working out the best. one of the tactics that I use to accomplish that is by omitting those common words that I would normally be using over and over and over again in my content. So instead of saying IKEA down comforter this, I simply use the model names. I say Mysaron and I say Hanspar and so on and so forth. This way, it's still understood that Mysaron is an IKEA down comforter because it's on the IKEA down comforter page, and I still have a good shot at ranking for not just one phrase, but both of them. And ultimately, I will be shooting for rankings on all of these different model phrases. Now, finally, we get to the last part of this class, which is actually going to be the most time-consuming part, and that is to detail out page plans for all these different pages that are on my website. To do this, I recommend for you to open up your live website and to go through one page at a time to review your plans for that page, to look at that page on your live website, and then finally to visualize what it's going to take to put those plans into action. And you essentially want to be taking detailed notes on that visualization, what it's going to take to make those changes. So if you're wanting to cover a new subtopic on a particular page, you might simply be saying, I have this subtopic, I want to put it maybe at the bottom of the page, and I want to have a couple of paragraphs talking about it. You might mention how it's going to be geared, what the keyword phrases might be that you're trying to go after for it. You know, important things of that nature, to the point where you could take this entire overhaul plan and send it off to somebody else, and they could actually complete all of the various writing pieces that you would want to have for this project. So what I want to do is go back through my own plan and show you how exactly this works. So once again, start with your homepage. And then you're going to be working your way down through all the different pages on your site. Whatever you have listed in your overhaul plan here is quite fine. Just proceed down this list one at a time, going through your pages and looking at the page, looking at the notes that you have taken as far as your research. And anytime that you see a page where a change needs to be made, take some notes on what that change is going to be, where that change is going to take place, maybe even what you're going to be replacing it with, new sections of content that you might want to add, new images or other kinds of media, new Amazon ads that you might want to be putting in. There's a number of different situations where you might have various kinds of changes that you want to be making on your site. So for example, on my site here, on my home page, I was looking at some some of my Google stats here. That's what that home page 85% is. I want to go back and verify this once again because there were some issues going on with my site originally. I just want to see if there's any difference with the more recent traffic as I have fixed things on my site. Perhaps the hacking that took place on the website, it may have skewed some of these results for me. So anything drastic like my homepage, where maybe it's not quite operating as I thought it was previously, it's certainly okay to question your original research, to go back and look for more information, to look at different periods of time to verify it. And as an example, on my homepage here, just looking back at the most recent 30 days, I see a very different change as far as what was going on previously compared to what's happening now. I'm actually only getting 58% drop-off traffic, whereas before, when I did this research and was looking at a different period of time, I actually found 85% then. So at 85%, I would be wondering, okay, what's going on with the homepage? What's causing this particular problem? Looking back at it now, though, and seeing that it's only 58% and not 85%, then I'm a lot more comfortable with that. I don't feel as much of a need to change it. What I might consider doing, though, is potentially reducing the number of choices that are available for them here. There are a lot of different choices all up at the top of this page that they can click, and if I reduce the number of choices, it might make it a little easier for them to center in on. One, it might increase my click-through rates from this page to move through my traffic funnel. However, with those new rates, I feel like they're doing a lot better. I'm just going to make a note of it, and for now I'm not going to make any plans on making major changes to this particular page. But I might want to consider once again simplifying my top menus, possibly. And I'm also going to have to consider what to do with new products that I'm going to end up adding into my page. So for example, my new brands that I'm going to be covering, can I add them to this list? Is there room for them? Perhaps if I was to combine all of my pins on pages into one, then I would have room for a couple of new links to be added down below this entire list. So as far as my homepage goes, that's the majority of the changes or notes that I might need as far as all of that is concerned. So I'm just going to make a note here where to put new brand links and what to do with pins on page links. I'm also going to say consider simplifying homepage menus to give less choices and see if click rate is increased. So this is basically what you want to do on any page that you have done some research for. Whatever that research may be, gear that towards whatever it is you're taking your notes upon. So I am once again going to be continuing on through my list here to give you a number of different examples of how this whole thing works. anything that you see as you're going along that you don't like, that you want to change or try it a different way, those are the notes that you're looking for once again. So now on this page, the page itself doesn't look too bad. It's actually a decent looking page. When I look at my research notes for it, I see that I actually have a really good rate of the number of people that go from this page and continue on to another page of my website. However, this is not really taking place through some kind of a content funnel link down at the bottom of my page. Most likely, people are leaving back through one of these other top links instead. So I could investigate that if I wanted to try to figure out exactly where people are going from that page to. Taking a look over here at Google once again to see if it's going to give me any information on that. I need to drill down into this bottom listing here. I'm not sure if it's going to let me do that though. I might need to move back out to a different time frame here, which is where I got my original stats from. And unfortunately, it's still not showing up. I might have it now. I'm looking to explore through this particular page what's happening to my traffic. So I want to try to give myself some direction as far as what I should do with this page. Now the drop-off rate is actually really good, but ultimately I'm not really accomplishing the goal of my funnel here. I'm not moving traffic along from this page to any particular product or brand page that is on my website. And again, that would be something that I would want to be doing to earn commissions. And it looks like it wasn't able to pull up the data for me on that particular page, unfortunately. I'm going to make a note on this page to see if I can try to get it to show me some data on exactly what's going on. The page is doing good. I want to know, is this something, my low drop-off rate here, is this something that I can apply to some of my other pages that have, say, a much higher drop-off rate, like this one or this one? And then on top of that, should I be making any kind of changes to this particular page? So I'm going to have to research this one a little more in depth, it looks like. But this is the kind of thing that we're looking to find out at this point as far as changes that we want to be making on our site. On my site, I was focusing on my informational pages on ensuring that my traffic funnel was working as best as I could possibly make it. And then obviously on my product pages, I'm focusing on getting as much traffic to them as I can and ensuring that I'm converting as much of that traffic into sales as possible. So now it looks like on my Fill Power page, for example, I still have pretty much the same thing going on. I have my standard article, I have my links on the side, but I'm getting a much different drop-off rate, at least for the period of time that I was originally searching. So I'm definitely going to have to use the information that I can find from my more in-depth research on my sizes page and apply this to most likely my Fill Power page, and I guess the consumer concerns page would be a little bit different. On this page, it simply looks like I might just want to remove that sidebar. On this page, I want to again investigate my sizes page and find out where the traffic is going to figure out if this is something that I need to apply to this page or not. I also have a statement at the bottom that needs to be the link. It's like something I missed originally. That might be one reason why maybe I'm losing more traffic. Maybe they get to the end and that link isn't actually what looks like it should be a link. And so maybe they drop off because of that. That could be one potential reason. And then on my consumer concerns page, my main thing here is removing this blank sidebar. It should help direct people along to moving into one of these topics that I'm covering, because this is more of a category page, and then these are all of my pages that are organized into this category. So I don't really need this big blank spot over here because I'm not utilizing it for anything. So moving on, I have my brands pages. Even though I don't have any information there, it looks like I might also want to do the same. Remove my blank sidebar on the brands page. I may even need to do it on my buying guide. Nope, I have links over there on my buying guide page, but I'm not using those on the other ones. So I want to make sure I get rid of them on the two that I'm not utilizing those links for. And then as far as these individual brand pages go, my Pins On and my IKEA pages are the two that I'm going to be focusing on the most. Now my Pins On page, I mentioned that this is kind of a subcategory page, that it has these other pages grouped underneath it, and these actually promote the Amazon products, whereas I'm considering taking all of this content and all the content from these two pages and simply combining it all into one page. So this has all of the ads and all of the content information as well. So that would be my biggest notes as far as my Pins On page is concerned. I also have my blank sidebar here once again. I also think the page could use a new title if I end up doing that, because I'm not necessarily going after pins on as a whole. I'm really just trying to target the down comforters that are from pins on, while they definitely do stuff beyond that one type of product. They have a lot of other bedding types of products too. At one point I was debating maybe trying to expand this site in that direction, but I kind of put all this content out there on my website initially to use it as kind of feeler content to find the areas of the niche that have the most opportunity in them, and then I can dive headfirst into those specific areas to try to do as good as I possibly can with them. So on these pages, I just have my content and my advertisement. So this would also involve moving content and ads as well. Now my IKEA page is where a really large majority of my work is going to be taking place. I have information there on Misa Ron, Misa Vet, and Misa Rosenglim. However, I'm only promoting this one product. It's the only one that I was ever able to really find on Amazon. I might want to double check and see if these other two happen to be available or not. I also might want to consider adding in a little bit of new content, just even if it's a paragraph or something like that about these other two types, in addition to everything else that I'm covering, because I never really went into that much detail about these other two. I do briefly mention them throughout here, having to do with a couple of the primary features of these comforters and how they vary. As far as that goes, though, I would want to consider, how do I work in all of these new models into this existing content? I also need to address what is going on with my Saran. So I'm going to try to figure out what's happening with the product as far as company-wide. Like, is this thing discontinued? Is it gone forever? Has it been replaced with something? And provide some information on that for people, and also some suggested replacement items for it too. So I can just say, hey, this is not available anymore, but you can get this, and it's comparable. Maybe it costs about the same thing that the one you were looking for did. This kind of stuff obviously helps to take that traffic that is not able to buy the product that I'm promoting and turns it into potentially being able to buy something that I'm promoting. But it has a whole different underlying area to it. And that is all of these other things that I'm going to be talking about. The new models of the IKEA down comforters, the information about what is happening with Myceron, whether it's been discontinued and things of that nature. All of this puts me in territory of getting new search rankings once again. Maybe I already have a good search ranking on IKEA Myceron, But maybe if people are searching about information whether that product is discontinued or not, maybe I'm not in the top of the rankings. But I could pretty much guarantee if I just add the word discontinued somewhere on this page, I would end up ranking for anything having to do with discontinued and the My Surround Down comforters too. So it's a multi-pronged approach. It accomplishes a couple different things all in one fell swoop. And not only that, it makes a really useful page too. Google can never visit these types of pages and say that this person is trying to cheat the search rankings, that this person is not providing useful information that's going to help people that are searching for these different keywords. In fact, it's quite the opposite of that. And that's what you're really going for with this entire approach. Now, I also want to think about what I'm going to be doing with these ads and potentially even this general information that I have for the My Surround Down comforters. I might want to consider moving this stuff down the page. Maybe just having a note up at the top about the IKEA My Surround Down comforter, whatever has happened to it. Then I can go straight into promoting these other models. And then finally, I could have other general type of information like this particular info. But I might expand this with info about the other models that I'm covering, perhaps. Maybe I could come up with some kind of a comparison chart or something that would lay out all the information for all these different models and still include all this information that I had for My Surround. So when I'm looking at doing a pretty heavy revision on a page, I do have my long-term goal in mind, which is to, get the people that are coming in for looking for this product to instead end up buying one of these products. But I also want to make sure that I am preserving whatever I had before. The ads are not important because they're not really doing much for me. I have landed a couple of sales over the last year or so on these, but for the most part, they really have not been in stock or available. However, I might still include one My Surround ad just so people could go and take a look at it, just so I still have that ad and can still have the picture for it and the product information for it contained on my website. So I'm not completely wiping out all of that stuff because I still want to be maintaining my search rankings for that product. So I'm thinking I remove all but one of the IKEA My Surround ads. I can then continue with the new or other models that I want to be talking about, which would be all of these guys. Obviously, I will need to create new ads for new models and also figure out perhaps what I'm going to do with the general information. So this gives me a pretty basic summary of what I'm intending on doing with this entire page. There might be a couple of minor details that I don't have quite ironed out yet. I can look into these a little bit deeper before I actually do decide to begin my writing or to begin my construction on the site. But for the most part, this puts me in a pretty good position to proceed. Now, the remaining parts of my plan here, these 3 sections, are going to be new brand pages. So for these new brand pages, I'm going to have to add them in to the home page potentially if I want to have a link included here. I'm also going to have to make some updates to the brand page itself to add in new sections of content for each of these 3 new brands. So this, I might need to go back up to my brands page here and say something about we're adding the stuff for the 3 new brands. I think it was King Linen. Yep. So I know that I need to add some new information there. I obviously know that I need to create new pages for each of these. If I have some in-depth information about these subjects already, or if there are certain subtopics that maybe I've researched for these different brands that I want to go into, I can write out a little bit of a summary or description at this point to give myself, again, some more direction, or to give possibly your writer some direction if you happen to be outsourcing the writing work that's going to go into this. So hopefully this gives you a pretty good idea of how to go through your own page planning, even though this is obviously going to be something that's going to drastically vary from one project to the next. There still are a lot of basic techniques and strategies that apply to mine that would certainly apply to your project too. Now the last thing as far as the plan goes, besides changes that you might want to make to your existing site or new pages that you want to create on your site, you might also have some structure changes that you wanted to do. Anything that you might have left over from your research, add it into the appropriate area of your site. If need be, just make a large note up at the top for something particular that you need to do. You might have new category pages that you have to create. You might have different ways that you need to reorganize some of the existing content that is on your site. A lot of that stuff is staying in place and will be unchanged on my website, but we've obviously talked about a lot of different types of changes or things that you could decide to do as part of an overhaul project. And so you simply just want to make sure that those are getting into your overall plan that you are coming up with. So I can go back through this now when it's come time to do my entire site, and I can say, okay, what new content do I need to write? Maybe I want to add some extra content to this page to get a rankings increase, and maybe I need a couple of paragraphs there. A decent majority of my content is going to be on my IKEA page and also on these other new pages that I'm going to be adding in to my website. So I can take a quick glance at this entire plan and say, okay, this is what I need to do. This is the writing that I need to accomplish. If I wanted to outsource this writing, I can just simply order up 1, 2, 3, 4 articles plus maybe a couple of other paragraphs about other kinds of topics. And it would be pretty straightforward and simple to do. If I'm not outsourcing, I can still once again go through this plan one page at a time and carry out the work that I have designated to do on it and just check it off my list as I go. When you're dealing with a project that might have you doing stuff on 20, 30, 40 different pages of a website potentially, it is a lot easier to give yourself a little bit of organization like this. And honestly, it doesn't take a ton of time. You can see that I was able to go through my research and actually do this on screen for you guys in just a little over an hour or so. And I was even talking about and teaching as I went as well. So you could very well go through your own research and maybe even accomplish it faster than this, just depending on how many different changes or new pages and things like that you are planning for your website. So to get prepared for the next class, go through your own research just like I have done today and organize all of this into individual pages. I start out with my existing pages and add in any changes or additions that I want to make to those new subtopics that I want to be targeting. I then look at new pages that I want to create. It might be informational or product pages. It doesn't really matter. You simply need to figure out where in your site it's going to go, put it into your plan in the appropriate area, and also ask yourself whether or not you need any other pages to be able to put something new into your website. A new category, for example, if you had a topic that you wanted to target and it didn't fit in with all of the other categories that are already on your site, you would have to create a new category to organize that. This also is useful because you can look at this and figure out pretty easily when some kind of a change that you are planning on making may just not work out like you had hoped for it to. For example, if you had a new topic that you wanted to cover and it was going to require a new category on your site, if you didn't have anything else that you could group into that same category, you might ask yourself, whether it is really worth putting on your site, because you don't want to just have a whole section of your site that is just there to maybe link up to one other page. So it can not only help you to figure out what to do, but this plan can also help you to figure out what not to do with your overhaul plans. And then finally, go back through one page at a time and create some detailed plans for each of those pages, just like you got to see me do. Whatever your research is directing you towards, whatever problem your research is telling you is going on a given page of your website, if you're not happy with the stats that you're getting from it, then make some changes. You can then wait a little bit of time after you put this stuff into effect. You can look back at your research and you can say for sure whether or not your changes are better than what you had originally. And in a worst case scenario, you can always roll back changes on websites, especially on WordPress. It's actually really, really easy to do that. So in the next class, you need to be prepared to either get started with your own writing or to potentially outsource your writing to somebody else if you're planning on not doing that writing yourself. Now, since we are talking about getting prepared for the next class, if you are planning on outsourcing, you might be wondering what you could expect to pay to hire a writer to do articles for you for this overhaul project. Unfortunately, I can't give you an exact amount, but I did want to briefly discuss this because I can at least give you some kind of a general idea of perhaps a range that it might be in. Now, this will be heavily dependent upon how much writing you actually need to have done. But what I recommend to do is to figure out roughly how many words you might want to have written for you. So you could go back through your plan that you had put together, and for example here, if I wanted to add some more content, maybe I had 200 words that I wanted added on to that section. And then my pins on page, I might need another 200 new words. My brands page, I'm going to need summaries for each of those brands. They might be about 100 words a piece, so that'll be about 300 words. My IKEA page, I have 5 new models that I want to be covering. I have a number of other things that I need to be discussing. I'm gonna give it about 1,500 words on my IKEA page. It could potentially be a pretty hefty page when I'm done with it. And then finally, for my new pages that I want to add, down here at the bottom, I've got 3 of them. They're definitely going to be 500 words a piece, and I may go closer to 1,000 if I can stretch that kind of content from each. I might just say on average that it will be about 800 words each, so that'll give me 2,400 words total. And so 39, 42, 46. So I've got 4,600 words potentially, just based on my research and this overhaul plan that I've put together. At least these should be the large chunks of new content that's going to be added into this website. So if I was using this to try to come up with some kind of an estimate on what I might expect to pay to outsource this work to somebody, the first thing I would want to do is to think about what kind of a quality of a writer am I looking to try to hire. There's certainly a very, very wide range. You can go super, super cheap and get articles that are probably not going to contain any useful information. They might even be duplicate content taken from somewhere else and respun or something. It might not make much sense. And chances are it's probably not going to be written by an English-speaking writer. You can go really, really cheap and get it for like a couple of bucks for, say, a 500-word article at the most. However, there's another end of the spectrum where you can hire really professional writers, people that write for a living, people that perhaps have a career in a certain industry, and you want to basically get them to write some kind of an expert article for you on a certain subject. Those types of writers are going to be really, really expensive, and most likely, again, not what you would want to be doing. You would want to have a really good reason to shell out a lot of money for one single article on a website, to go to one of those professional expert sources to get them to provide you that content. But for one of them, for say a 500-word article, you might pay $250 to $500 to get a real expert to write something like that for you. So obviously that's a little on the expensive side unless you have a really good reason to justify that kind of an expenditure. The more the average though, that I think is a good price to offer. And as a writer, it'll get you maybe not a spectacular writer, but it should get you a pretty decent one. Back when I used to do some freelancing for, at least some of it was article writing. Granted, it's been quite a long time, but I used to charge even less than this rate, which is $3 per 100 words. So if you want to figure out what that'll end up costing you, if you multiply your number of words by 0.03, then this is going to give you your estimated cost, at least offering $3 per 100 words. So a 500 word article, you'd be looking at $15 for that particular article. So 4,600 words times 0.03 be approximately $138. Really not too bad for getting that kind of writing done. Now again, this is just a wild estimate. It could certainly be much lower than that. It could certainly be much higher than that. It's just all going to depend on what kind of quality you're looking for and exactly who you end up finding to do that for you. Now this is all going to be something that we're going to talk about in much more detail in the next class. The next class is going to be all about writing. So we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of if you decide to write this content yourself, how to go about it that way. And then we're also going to talk about it from the perspective of if you want to outsource for that content, how to go about it that way, how to find your worker, how to screen your applicants and to pick the right person for the job, and how to go about getting them paid to make sure you don't get scammed, the whole 9 yards. We're going to be covering it all. So all you simply need to do this week is to get prepared to start either writing or outsourcing that writing for the next class. So just get your research turned into a completed overhaul plan, and then we will proceed on with the writing starting in the next class. So I'd like to go ahead and open the floor to our weekly Q&A session that I do with each class for Azon Overhaul. If you have any questions having to do with tonight's class or even having to do with anything else that we may have covered in this series so far, please feel free to add that into the chat box at any time. Even if I am in the middle of answering somebody else's question, I will get to you as quickly as I possibly can. Mark was asking what theme that was. I assume you're talking about my Down Comforter Guide site. That's Weaver Extreme. It's a free theme available through WordPress. You can simply search for and install it through there. It's very adaptable. Actually use it on, I can't remember the last Amazon site that I've created that doesn't use that theme. So I've been using it for new sites that I make for many years, and even beyond Amazon sites that I make, I use it for probably 95% of those. Okay, that's what you're using. Yeah, I find it to be highly customizable. I'm a really big fan of it. I've been using it since even before Weaver Extreme existed. Had Weaver and Weaver 2 before that. Mark is asking, can I show how to make menus for categories on the right sidebar? That is actually a bit of a complicated process. I'd be inclined to just dive in and show you how to do it right now, but everyone that is in the Azon Overhaul series, I provided all of you guys access to the Azon Home Study course, a complete training series that goes through how I actually built downcomforterguide.com. So if you look back to when you purchased your ticket into the Azon Overhaul series, you should have access information for the Azon Home Study course. And if you go and check that out, in the site construction lessons, there's only about 2 of them where the actual site is being put together. It's within one of those 2 lessons. Goes into extreme detail on it, shows you exactly what to do step by step. So that would probably be what I would recommend to go and check out. Even if I showed you here, I could easily end up skipping a important step or something like that. Tina, I was reading through your question. Tina's asking, for writing articles, do I feel like there would be a benefit to adding a page that just lists the variations of a product on your site? Like a full page with product has multiple colors or similar, so you can make a page that lists images of all color versions and a brief description. The page then links to your review page and also has links to each product version to Amazon. To a certain extent, I think you can do what you're trying to do. What I would not recommend to do, though, is to separate that into a bunch of different pages. I think you would actually be best off making one single page that targeted that product, whatever it's referred to in general. If you could look at what all those different variations are, you know, what's one common name that you could call all of them by, basically. That's what your main page would be about. And then you just have a number of different subsections going throughout that page, covering each of those different variations. This will help you to avoid keyword spam. Google also doesn't like to see duplicate content, and people get confused by duplicate content a lot of times. It's not going out there on the internet and taking content that already exists and putting it on your website. It is actually having the same or very, very similar content on multiple pages of your own site. So you don't want to have all these different topics that still have this very common similarity, or they all have one thing that is exactly the same about them. You basically would find yourself repeating a lot of stuff throughout the pages for all those different variations. So you can not only avoid all that repetition and potential penalties that could come along with that as far as in the search rankings, but it'll also benefit you more in terms of just making a more powerful, more useful page in general. You'll have this one page that's covering all these different variations, and Just like I've done on my IKEA Down Comforter page, when you give enough information and you're talking about the right subtopics for it, you can not only rank for your main topic, but for all those different subtopics as well. I mean, it it could help the rankings. Like if you set up one main review page and then you have all of these different variation pages that are providing information about that and then linking back up to the main review page, it would help to increase the ranking of that main review page, but it would have to be done very carefully to where you still need enough unique information to have on all those other pages, all those variation pages. Otherwise, you're spamming. So it's kind of a very fine line to walk there, which if you're maybe a little unsure of how to proceed, you would be best off just putting it all on one page and not trying to go with, linking strategies like that. But there's still other ways that you can go about it. If not going for all those product variations or whatever, you can still have a lot of relational subjects as far as informational topics and have all of that content linking back up to your product review and use that to help you to increase your search rankings on it instead. So for example, on my IKEA Down Comforter page, I could talk about, getting a better night's rest, or maybe talk about some kind of a sleep study or something like that, and help to tie it into and link back up with my product review, essentially as recommending that product for solving that problem. I wouldn't necessarily say in general it's bad. It's just a tactic that I think you have to be pretty careful with these days. It used to work. It used to work great. You could take one page about a product and you could create 50 different pages on your site and essentially rewrite the same information 50 different times and link back up to that one page and pass along all of that ranking power. And then you would have, that one review that ranked really, really great. But, Google caught on to that kind of stuff years ago, in my opinion. And even if you can find a tactic like that that will give you some kind of essentially an unfair advantage, you have to ask yourself, if Google actually saw your website, what would they think of it? Would they think that that tactic is okay? Or would they feel like you're trying to cheat the rankings somehow or another? Is the biggest thing that I will focus on when I'm unsure of how to proceed about something or whether to try something a certain way or not. If I feel like I wouldn't want, say, the owner of Google to actually see my page because he'd just be like, oh my gosh, get this junk out of my rankings. If that would be the case, then I just simply would not do that. I would just avoid it. I would take the safe route instead. Okay. Yeah, I mean if all those different variations, I mean it's hard to say without knowing or without having, say, a specific example to go off of. Um, if there's enough differences in those variations to justify separate pages, and if you're not going to be repeating the same information on all those different pages, then then yes, it could be worth it if you are definitely, trying to maintain focus on quality there. Um, it's not a bad thing to do. It's just bad to do the wrong way, basically. And I feel like a lot of people can stray into doing it the wrong way without even really being aware of that fact. So it sounds like what you're planning on doing might be okay though, at least without knowing the exact product and situation and everything. I've actually I've seen a pretty decent amount of change already with my site just having cleared up the hacking issues and getting all that stuff sorted out has allowed the traffic to recover quite a bit. You can see here kind of my before and all the problems were happening right in here, and starting to recover pretty nicely, and ultimately haven't published the first word of work on the actual website either. This is just from clearing up all the stuff with Google penalties and things going on in my Webmaster Tools account that I was showing all of you guys in the earlier classes. So all this overall work, you can start to see results from this type of stuff pretty quickly when you're in the right situation.